This is Leaders Elevating Leaders, bringing you the power of possibility by learning from successful leaders across Northeast Florida. We're breaking down barriers, overcoming fears, and stepping out of our comfort zones to be inspired and change our mindset from it's complicated to it's possible. I'm your host, Angela Timberlake, talent development executive, executive coach, business owner, and now the Vice President of Elevate Women with Jax USA Partnership, the Economic Development Division of the Jacksonville Chamber. And our mission is to elevate women to the highest level of leadership across Northeast Florida. When we do, we become a destination where top talent can thrive, which means our business, our economy, and our community thrive. Now, let's hear how it's possible for you. All right, welcome to Leaders Elevating Leaders. I am your host, Angela Timberlake. I'm the Vice President of Elevate Women, and I'm thrilled to bring you our guest today who's taking the fintech world by storm, Yolande Piazza. We are fortunate to have her presence in Northeast Florida. She is the Vice President of Financial Services of Google Cloud. She's leading their North American financial services, sales, and customer engaging and engineering teams. Previously, she was the CEO of City FinTech, where she led the company's consumer innovation labs. She serves on the board of H&R Block and she's part of the United Nations Women Global Innovation Coalition for Change. She also founded, in her spare time, the Future of Women in IT program, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. And she was named one of the most powerful women in banking in 2019 and a woman to watch by American bankers. So Yolande, it is an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. Really excited to be doing this.
Yeah, and I just, that's a little bit about the accolades and the things that you've accomplished. I'd love for you to just, share a little bit about yourself and how you've become a local here in Northeast Florida.
I have to tell you, I grew up in the UK. My first big move was to Colorado. Then I ended up in upstate New York. And then with a transfer with Citi to take on a new opportunity, I ended up coming down here to Jacksonville, Florida. And I have to tell you, it was the first time that I started calling anywhere in the US home. I fell in love with this. I get to live where people vacation. It doesn't get any better than that. So moved down here with the job. Ended up having to go back to New York City for 3 years, and that did nothing but absolutely reinforce my home is here in North Florida. So I love everything about the lifestyle. I find it's a great place to de-stress on the weekends with a hectic work schedule. So yeah, I am definitely a huge fan of living here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're glad to have you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the qualities and leadership and what contributed to all of your success. So talk to us a little bit about the qualities that you feel contributed the most towards your success as a leader.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this when people talk to me about my career, but I have to tell you, I think it was probably a combination of curiosity and determination. I was that person that would always, why do we do it that way? Why have we looked at making this easier? Have we looked at making this faster? Have we looked at taking cost out of this opportunity? And to be honest, that fueled my career much more than, an aspiration of I want to be in this seat within the next, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I was just constantly on the hunt for how do we actually make where we work a better place? How do we make it better for our customers? How do we make it easier for our employees? And that, for me, I think drove me. I'm very much a person of passion. And I truly believe if you surround yourself with people of passion, you can move mountains collectively. So I would say that was probably, and then the determination to see it through. I'm the type of person when someone says it can't be done, I'm the first to raise my hand and go, I'll try.
I love it. I'm sure that served you well in the fintech space. And I love that you said the follow through, because I think we do have a lot of people that have great ideas, but actually seeing it to fruition is a whole nother element.
Absolutely. I'm a big proponent of say-do ratio. Don't say it if you're not confident, you can do it. And no matter how hard it is, you have to see it through so you can say that it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did mentors and sponsors play a role?
I wasn't one of those people that looked or necessarily asked for mentorship. But when I look back over my career, people believed in my ability. And it was as I was transitioning into the CEO role for City FinTech, I actually took a moment to reflect. And I sat down and actually wrote a letter to three of the biggest supporters in my career, that they believed in things that I could do something even when I didn't believe it in myself. And they saw something in me that they really wanted to harness and to push. And I've been very, very lucky throughout my career that I really had great supporters, great champions, and people that were always willing to give me that shot of doing the impossible. So it wasn't something that I actively, put my hand up, I want a mentor, I need, a defined sponsor. But when I look back, they made a significant difference in my career.
Yeah. And I think that's, a pretty common theme as I interview women is that we don't typically raise our hand, right? And so we're not actively out there doing that, but it just kind of happens, and you have to stop and take a look at who are those champions around you, and what do they see in you that you may not see yourself. So I love seeing that. Now, being at the top, being the CEO, I'm sure you had many surprises, many different experiences. So talk to me a little bit about maybe what blind spots you experienced stepping into those kind of roles.
I think, when you're asked to go change the landscape and go think about things in a way that traditionally the organization didn't have the time or the capacity or the funding to be able to go do, it's great when you're somebody with all this passion to go change an industry. But what I found in the beginning is we start hitting brick walls. And I couldn't understand why people weren't as excited as I was. And then for me, I had to take a step back, and I've tried to live this always now. So most things that we do in work we're not putting people on the moon in general. I'm not saving lives, but the way that we approach things, it's hard to necessarily get everybody on board. And so what I did was actually take a step back, and I started putting myself in the shoes of others and recognizing most of the change isn't IQ, it's actually EQ. I am somebody that loves change, and I adopt change really quickly. In fact, I live for it. I always say to people, let me get something 90% of the way there and then take me out, because I'll tinker and I'll break it. I know that about myself. And so having the ability to stop and try to understand where people that were resisting were coming from, and make sure that I'm addressing their concerns, their issues, their risk points. Generally that there's a very real reason why, people don't want to make the change. And at first I felt like it was slowing everything down. But then when I realized, once I took the time to truly understand and listen and hear people out, it actually speeds up the process in its entirety when you're trying to convince people to go on that journey with you. So I tend to run hard and fast at everything. It is not something that I am naturally good at. And even in my role here, I often reflect, I'm like, I should have stopped and listened more. So that's definitely a blind spot and something I've become very aware of. But when you take the time to really hear somebody out, you build relationships and you start to build trust. And that made a huge difference when you're taking somebody on a change journey and you want them, to get on board with you.
Yeah, that's great advice. When we take that time to pause, it does feel like you're in mud, right? Like you can't get out fast enough, right? But yeah, so when you do it and you have success at it, you go faster than you thought you ever could. So that's really great advice. Now, would you do, and this is a question that I love to get the response from, would you do anything different? With everything that you know today, everything you've experienced, would you do anything in your career, your journey different?
I would be bolder, I think, much earlier in my career. I was the type of person, at 35 years old, I was still blushing in every meeting. And when I had something to say, and it wasn't that I didn't think it was valuable, it was knowing that all eyes were on me. And it was very uncomfortable for me. I would have told myself, get over it. I think somebody once said to me, typically when a man makes a mistake, they don't bat an eyelid and they keep going, they never rethink it. When a woman makes a mistake, it gets in your head and it can actually truly affect everything else that you have to say. I was constantly in my own head, that it's better not to say, or I'll just say it in a smaller group. And now I don't worry about that. Now I don't care if I'm like, I screw up every day. Everyone does. So I would have been bolder, and I would not have been afraid to ask for what I want. I went through this very strange period on my journey that felt like I was lucky to be where I was, not that an organization was potentially lucky to have me. And so any increases in compensation, I was truly grateful, but I didn't actually stand up and ask for what I wanted or what I believed the role was worth until probably the last 2 roles. And so I think that I would have been bolder, and I definitely would have been more comfortable asking for what I want. I've been very lucky in my career that I've had a number of doors opened and had great opportunities. But I often wonder if I'd have asked for them earlier, where would I be today?
That's great. Yeah, and it's a struggle that we have as women, as we feel like if we ask, it could change our path in a negative way, right?
Yeah.
And so we just kind of deal with it, and we just say, it'll come in time, and it'll come in time. And so I think everybody has a little bit of taste of that. So I love that. And what would you say to we have so many women that ask that question: how do we get there? How do we ask for what we want? What would your advice to them be?
I think there's always a way of asking it. And I tell people coming into the role, start having your career aspirations early with your manager and with the people on team that you potentially want to be there. So people know and understand when the next generation, I've seen a huge shift. I've hired such talented individuals, males and females, and they come in saying, I'm really excited about this job, but here's what I'd love to be doing. I'd love to have an opportunity to do this. And what it does for me is I pay them extra attention because I know now that they're on the career growth. So that's what I would tell people to do, is be very honest. So it doesn't come across as threatening. You don't get to the point of frustration. I've been doing this for the last 5 years. I want to do something new. I'm going to quit, which I think is very traditional behavior. Then I'll just go somewhere else, right? Somebody else is interested in me. I'm going to follow that path. But be open, be honest about what it is that you want to do, or that you want to grow, or you want to get into people management, or you want to start taking on bigger initiatives, and start those conversations early so they're never threatening. But it does change. For me, it makes me think about, how do I spend extra time with that individual to make sure that if they are delivering everything I ask for them, then I have a responsibility and an obligation to ensure that I'm investing back in them.
That's good. I love that advice. That was sort of one of the questions I had for you, of how to inspire others to be the CEO of their career. And you just kind of summed that up in one little package of, take it as, be intentional about where you want to go and be able to share that. And I think we don't. We kind of hang on to that and assume people know what we want to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was how it was for me for the longest time. Yeah.
Now, what would you say that surprised you most about being in an executive role?
I had these, aspirations. Wouldn't it be amazing to sit at the table? Wouldn't it be amazing to be part of these discussions? And I have to tell you, when you get there, you go, what did I do to have the time back where I could actually go do something, versus sit in meetings, for literally 8 to 9 hours a day. So that was, I think the big realization is everyone's trying to figure it out. And these were people that once in my career I was super intimidated by. And then quickly you realize is that there's no reason to be intimidated. It's a, what can you learn from these individuals? And what they have generally that we don't have is experience. They've made their mistakes, they've tried different things, so they have a view and an opinion of what can work and what can't work, probably way more than somebody more junior, in their career. So for me, it was this observation that nobody's better than anyone else. It's just different experience, different perspective. And for me, it was about finding a voice to be comfortable, feeling like I've earned the right to be there and be one with my peers. So that took a little while for me to get, but now it's what I would give not to sit in meetings for 10 hours a day.
I hear you. I definitely agree with that. So now let's talk about that. So we're talking a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about everybody bringing something else to the table, right? And so let's talk about diverse leadership, because that's what Elevate Women is all about. So talk to me where you've experienced how having diversity of thought at the table positively enhanced a situation or an outcome.
Absolutely. And, I've always been a champion of diversity of thought, diversity of people, but it really hit home when we were working in City FinTech. And somebody actually said to me one time, do you really want 20-year-olds designing the solution for your grandparents? And, how healthcare is going to work and how they're going to take care of them. And it hit home to me because I thought as we were designing solutions for everyone, what happens if it's only a male-dominated perspective? When quite often it is the women that are the CFOs of their household, that they're running the bills, they're managing the money. And we weren't stopping and really thinking about that. And I can tell you, when we were working on an initiative that really focused on what would women want out of banking. And sitting there and having this conversation with my team was 50% from the executive level all the way down, 50% women, 50% male. And the dialogue and the questions, and I sat back and I realized that we are only going to be the best we can be when we really have mixed views and, mixed opinions in there, because then you get this true representation. And it was fascinating. And in fact, I'd grown up in a very male-dominated role. Quite often, I was the only female at the table, and more than one time in my career. And we're sitting there with this mix of very, truly phenomenal female leadership, of 50% and 50% of fantastic male leadership. And we were talking about Pinterest, and it didn't occur to me that one of the guys in the room, one of the leaders, actually said to me, he's like, I just don't get this Pinterest thing because my wife loves it, but I can't use it. I can't figure it out. It's just not logical to me. And this huge light bulb went on. It's that we're wired differently and we think differently and we approach things differently, quite honestly. And the only way we can be successful is if we make sure that we've got broad perspective and people weighing in on the products and the solutions of our future.
Yeah, that's great. So what can we be doing? What can companies be doing? I love that you said that you had 50-50 representation for that kind of initiative. So what can companies be doing to move towards that? How do we embrace leadership diversity, and how do we promote it, and especially at the executive and the board level?
I have to tell you, when I got to the 50%, it was a little easier for me because I got to start with basically a blank slate. So we got to hire from the beginning. But the biggest thing is getting out of one's shadow. It is very easy. Like, we're on a conversation, we get along naturally. So it'd be really easy for me to hire you. I'm going to be spending hours upon hours every week with you. that we like the same things. So we've just taken the pressure of working together off our shoulders. So it's very easy to go, this person is like me, we're going to get on great, it'd be a fantastic fit to the team. It is really hard to say this person is not like me at all. And this person, it feels somewhat uncomfortable because what are we going to talk about when we make small talk? And so when you start to step back and start to think about what is it that you're trying to solve for? How are you going to engage in people that make you better as a leader? I always look at the diversity of my leadership team. I feel like I have to have general knowledge about everything, but I need people with real expertise around the domains that they run and that they own. And that makes me better as a leader. And the more diversity you have around the table and different views and different opinions, I think that's how you grow as a team. So it's about doing the uncomfortable. It's about taking a chance on something that feels unnatural to you and recognizing and being okay that they don't always work out. The same as, anyone you hire. And I think there's this big fear that if we put a diverse candidate in a role, what if it goes wrong? Now I have to keep the individual in there and it brings the entire team down. And I've seen that kind of behavior versus we just all need to mature and deal with it the same way as if we brought anybody in to that role. So the other thing is you've got to look at the people coming in the door. If you don't have 50% in the beginning, it is very unlikely you're ever going to get to 50% at the top of the house. So this isn't a one, only a senior problem or only an entry-level position. You've got to be looking at it throughout the organization. And people used to say to me, well, what tools did you use to get to 50%? And the answer was common sense. We want a balanced opinion. I didn't have any scorecards. I wasn't sitting there checking a box on candidates, but it's about paying it forward. It's about having strong role models that are willing to lead by example and, really making sure that we promote that across the organization. So I think there's some other things. It is harder to change than it is to start from the beginning. I fully recognize that, but it's about the same as everything. As you reinvent your business, as you start to think about the journey you're on, you have to rethink your talent too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I can't say that any better. So I'm going to leave that there. So let's talk a little bit about, so you've had some success creating women in leadership programs, right? You had the Women in IT. So talk a little bit about that and where you're heading now with our local university here. Talk to us a little bit.
Absolutely. Women in IT was just a phenomenal experience. It started off of, can you talk to 40 girls? That quickly became 400. That was 4,000 in a week. And due to just an amazing volunteer network, both inside of City and externally, led by one individual that's just amazing and really believes in it, we've now exceeded 50,000 girls. And it's, in different places across North America. We've had chapters in Singapore and in the UK. So super excited about getting women interested in technology. So that's a very well-established program still being run out of City. And I love going in for the internships and spending time with the high schoolers and the middle schoolers as well, as and when I have the opportunity. Recently, we actually were having a conversation with UNF around, how do we think about engaging students and startup organizations, and how do we start bringing them together? And I think it was inspired by conversations I was having with Andre Wallace around how do we think about Jacksonville as the next Austin or the next Nashville, and what does that look like? So we had a conversation, and I have to say UNF were fantastic about, we'll give this a try, about bringing startup organizations in front of students where students can then sign up to go work on their initiatives. So it gives students real startup experience. I think there's that idealized notion of, I want to go be part of a startup. Well, it's a great opportunity to go see whether you love it or hate it, and be engaged in something early on in their career, so they're actually getting real experience while they're still at university. And so we are working to put together an initiative where we would have startups, fintechs come in and pitch to students of all kinds. It's not just technical students, but those that are working in marketing or business studies that need to go write their business plan or their marketing plan to engage with these organizations and to start building this opportunity of starting to pair our next generation of talent with entrepreneurial ideas and spirit that potentially don't have the funding to really lift their initiatives off the ground. So it's very experimental right now, and we will see how it goes. But I'd love to see this grow into something, much bigger for North Florida overall.
Yeah, I love it. It's so exciting. And you've talked about it, many times about having to get into them early, right? Try to get to those that have that spark and light
Right.
that spark early. So I love that. So hopefully it's a success and it catches on. Well, thank you so much. You've been such an inspiration to so many people. We're thankful to have you here as a woman in finance and technology that we can aspire to become more like as well. So thank you so much. If there's one last piece of advice that you would give to the next, Yolanda out there, what would it be?
Do what you're passionate about. I work from 7 in the morning to sometimes 10, 11 at night, but I do it because I'm so passionate about the journey that we're on. And if you love what you're doing, it makes work a whole lot easier. And versus, the complexity of it's all about a paycheck. It's not what it is for me, and it never will be. So yeah, follow your dreams and do what makes you happy.
So great. I love it. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you for joining Leaders Elevating Leaders. I'm thankful for all of you that are watching. I believe we've seen the power of the possibility here today. So stay tuned for our next guest. Until then, believe in yourself, believe it's possible, and continue to elevate and inspire those around you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.